Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is part 3 in a series entitled The North Woods of Lower Michigan. Without further ado, guys, let's get straight into that. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing when I looked at the scratch marks on my door. I came to and realised that Lena was still on the phone. When I picked up my phone, she was yelling frantically on the other line. She heard the Crown Royal bottle break and thought something bad had happened. I quickly filled her in about the prints in the soil and the deep gouges in my door. She asked me for my address and wouldn't take no for an answer, no matter how much I tried to dissuade her. I assured her that I had everything under control, but women can be stubborn at times, and she told me she would be at my house within 30 minutes. While I waited for Lena to arrive, I thought I'd pulled my service pistol and began to walk the perimeter of my house just to investigate further. I followed the large prints around to the side of my house. Finger on the trigger of my pistol, feeling very much on edge, I tried to tell myself that I was convincing Lena that I had things under control, but I was really convincing myself. As I rounded the back of the house, a deer bolted from behind my deck into the cluster of woods at the edge of my property. My instincts took over and I fired 3 rounds into the general vicinity of the deer. The first 2 hit the cluster of trees, while the third hit the deer in the top of its hind leg. The deer squealed in pain and crashed into the trees, almost falling over, but it somehow kept its balance and ran off. When the adrenaline had settled, I lowered the gun to my side and began to look for more tracks. At every window, the beast had appeared to stop and claw some more into my framework. I had gotten to my bedroom window when I noticed it was busted out, and there were bite marks around the edges and deep scratches in the siding, almost as if the beast was trying to get into my window. After securing my house, I grabbed the broom and dustpan and cleared up my broken Crown Royal so as not to step on the shards later. As I was cleaning up, I saw Lena's DNR truck turn down my road and pull into my driveway. Before I could say a word to her, she walked up to the door to investigate the scratch marks and prints. As I was trying to talk to her, she lit a bundle of sage and began saying a blessing in Potawatomi. She confided in me that she didn't think the blessing would work, but her elder insisted that she do it. Once she was done with the blessing, she asked if I had someplace to go for the time being. I told her that it wasn't necessary, but she insisted that I go and pack an overnight bag for a couple of days, that I would be staying with her for a few days until we could figure this out. As I was packing, she told me what her elder had told her about the creature that was creating such chaos in our small community. She said the elder had called it a Numoshnim. She said the last word is Nine, which roughly translates to Dogman. She went on to say that the legend of the Dogman had been passed down through generations and was assumed to have been just that, a legend. I had finished packing by that point and told Lena I was ready to go. Before we left, I had to try and secure my bedroom window so as not to invite the local wildlife, mythological or otherwise, into my house. I found a piece of plywood in the garage and that was able to cut it down to size fairly quickly and secure it to the window frame. I could tell Lena was getting impatient by this point as I heard the occasional huff and puff. I assured her that it wouldn't be much longer at all, and she told me she hoped not, because one of the last things the elder had told me was don't go out at night. Once the house was secure to my liking, Lena got into her truck and I got into my car and began to follow her back to her house. By this time it was around 8:30 and we had about an hour and a half until full darkness, and Lena was stressed that she wanted to get back home before the dark hit. We were making great time to her house when my back tyre blew out. I had known it was a bad tyre for quite a while, but just never got around to getting a new one, and it bit me in the arse at the most inappropriate time. I threw on my flashers and slowed to a stop while Lena kept going. I called her and told her to turn around. I got out and started to go for my trunk for my jack and spare. I had just popped my trunk when I heard Lena tell me to leave the car for now and that we'd get it in the morning. I started to protest, but I noticed how uneasy she was and thought better of it. The rest of the rides went by quickly, with us making small talk, mostly getting to know each other a little better. It felt good not to be thinking about what was lurking in the woods for the first time in over a week. When we got to Lena's house, there was an old native man resting in a rocking chair, thoughtfully playing a flute. It was a beautiful melodious sound that I could have listened to for hours. The old man stopped when he saw us getting out of the truck. As we made our way up to the porch, he called out to Lena and said, "Little white dove, yabak otayai, kumakan, jin makitwa." Even the curious individual, I nudged Lena and whispered to her to know what he had said. The man interrupted me by saying, "You don't have to ask her what I said. I will tell you." I asked her if you are the white man she is working with, because she's not one to bring home men. I told him yes, I am, and introduced myself as Detective John Lowell and shook his hand. He told me he was Lena's grandfather and that his name was Maynard Cornstalk, but I should call him Two Bears. Two Bears looked to Lena and said, "Little white dove." She nodded obediently, and I asked if I would like sugar in my tea. I politely accepted, and she went inside. Two Bears turned back to me and said, "John, you have to know what this creature is that you're up against. I'll tell you all that I know in hopes that it may help you in your endeavours. The legend of the Dogman has been passed on for many generations. My great-grandfather told me about the Dogman 90 years ago, when I was just 5 years old. He told me that in the early 1800s, he was in a hunting party that had stopped for the night to rest. While he was tending to the fire, there was a loud crack deep in the woods. He notched an arrow in his bow, anticipating trouble. There were a series of cracks no more than 30 feet in the dense tree stand, when all of a sudden, a large beast bounded from the woods. The creature had a head of a wolf, but the torso of a large man, and it was covered in thick black fur, and it was smiling at my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather released his notched arrow, and it flew true, right into the beast's chest. The beast yelped and staggered slightly. It looked down to its chest and broke the arrow off. The beast was snarling at my great-grandfather, its lips curled up over its massive pointed teeth. The beast went to jump and was hit with 4 arrows in its chest. Then the beast staggered and fell over backwards. The other braves had woken and scrambled to defend themselves against the beast. The beast broke off the arrows and readied itself for another lunge when it appeared to second-guess itself. Deciding it was outnumbered, it decided to flee back into the darkness of the woods. Two Bears had enamoured me with his great-grandfather's tale about the Dogman so much that I hadn't noticed that Lena was back outside and sitting on the porch listening to the same fervour that I was. Two Bears went on to tell of his great-grandfather trading fur with the French traders and regaling them with his tale of a numerous nine. The Frenchman looked on in amazement as he spoke about his encounter with a fearsome beast. The Frenchman had heard other tales of the Dogmen, but they called it loup-garou. I interrupted Two Bears and said if my French lessons were remembered correctly, that means werewolf. I had a nightmare after the first incident where I was there in the woods. I seen the beast and it didn't look like a typical werewolf. Two Bears asked if I could elaborate on what I meant. So I told him about the nightmare and how I'd seen the Dogman. Two Bears seemed to be genuinely concerned as I described the beast almost exactly as his great-grandfather had when he told him the story. When I was done reciting the events of my nightmare, Two Bears said that the dreams are very important in a Native American culture, and It is a harbinger of sorts that I was able to see the dogman in my dream. When he finished speaking, I looked around and noticed that it was full dark. I had looked to have been... It was full dark and had looked to have been there for some time. I immediately reached for my phone and checked the time. My God, it was 11:45. Two Bears noticed my demeanour and assured me that I had nothing to worry about. I asked how he could be so sure, and he told me that the land was well protected, but wouldn't go into details about it. I felt at ease for the first time being, but I had grown weary from the day's events. Lena seemed to pick up on my weariness and told Two Bears that it was getting late. He nodded and said, "I know, little white dove. Why don't you show John here inside and I'll play my flute some more while I wait." Lena showed me inside to the pull-out couch that was all made up for me. She must have gotten it ready while she made tea. We said our goodbyes and I started to make myself comfortable. I thought that it would take a while to fall asleep, but with the melodic flute music that Two Bears was playing, I drifted off into a heavy slumber quicker than I had ever done before. I awoke sometime later with Lena shaking me. I asked her what was wrong as I reached for my service pistol that was tucked into my shirt that I had thrown into a crumple on the floor. Lena stopped my hand before I could reach for my pistol. She whispered that nothing was wrong in the house, but I was tossing and turning in my sleep. She handed me a glass of water and said that I was moaning, and at some point I screamed. That was what had woken her up in the first place. She asked me if I'd had the nightmare again, but I couldn't remember anything. I looked at my phone to see how long I was out for, and now it was 4:45 AM. I had 3 missed calls. 2 were from Derek, and a third was from a number I didn't recognise. There were 2 voicemails, one from Derek and the other number. Derek's message was frantic and barely understandable. He said, "John, I need you, man. Something's skulking around my yard. Something big." There was a loud howl and glass shattering, followed by the sound of 6 shots being fired. There was a barely discernible yelp, and 2 more shots were fired. The firing ended abruptly as I heard something crash into Derek, and the sound I heard next was one that I will never forget. The best way I can describe it is an overripe watermelon falling to the pavement from 6 feet off the ground. I was holding back tears as I threw on my shirt and went for my socks and shoes. Lena was alarmed and asked me what was going on. I couldn't explain it to her, so I had her listen to the voicemail while I finished getting dressed. She was in tears by the last 15 seconds of the voicemail. She asked what the other voicemail was, and I told her I hadn't even listened to it yet. She went to the next voicemail and put it on speaker so that I could hear. The voice on the other end sounded haggard and emotional. It said, "John, it's about Derek. He was found dead in his house about an hour ago. We're here now trying to figure out what the hell happened. Get here as soon as you can." Wow, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. I certainly am. Please do let me know down below in the comments. As ever, guys, please do like and share. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to DMT. And as ever, folks, remember, be safe, not sorry.